lightweight division as we have UFC veterans, and very surprised these guys have not fought each other yet. We got Bobby King Green coming in at minus 325 going up against Jeremy Lil Heathen Stevens, who comes in at plus 275. Now, Green is coming off of 2 big wins, the first of which was a split decision win against Lance Gibson Jr. If you watch that fight, there is no way you can score that fight for Gibson Jr. I know Gibson Jr. obviously made up for it with that win over Chase Hooper, but he was backpedaling that entire fight as Green just walked him down, landed his jabs, outstruck him, shut down the grappling game, and just did what King Green does best. Then he came back earlier this year and got a knockout win over Daniel Zellhuber while dogging him the entire fight. And that's a fight where Zellhuber once again found himself as a minus 500 favorite and fumbled the bag as he couldn't deal with the experience and striking chops of King Green. Green is, 39 years old, but still a guy that can go out there and really put it on his opponents. There's been a handful of fights that he's won that he probably shouldn't have won at this stage in his career. His submission loss to Paddy Pimblett was very surprising. The Mauricio Rufy fight, Rufy's going to do Rufy things, and we obviously saw what happened that night. But when Green has a good enough stylistic matchup ahead of him, we see the classic Green come out. Volume striking, a lot of pressure, goading his opponents too, right? Great head movement, counters well, rolls with shots very well. His defensive grappling has obviously improved to a good enough extent where most opponents are often able to or forced to strike with him. There was a point in time, especially during that COVID era, where a lot of his fights would be very close and would go to decisions, and he would either lose a split or win a split. But you got to be careful about the durability of him still, right? If he gets clipped with a clean enough shot, it's possible that he can eventually go out. He's 5-5 in his last 10 fights, but it's usually been his durability that has been his downfall. Out of those 5 losses that he had, only one of those fights went into round 2, and he won the first round in that fight against Drew Dober, but then ended up getting knocked out in the second round of that fight. I'd like to see the UFC continue to give him fights where he actually can be somewhat competitive, just like the Gibson fight, just like the Zellhuber fight. And it seems like it's one that they're giving him this weekend as well against Jeremy Lil Heathen Stevens. Now, it's very unorthodox for us to see the UFC have a type of relationship with the fighter like they have with Stevens, right? They're fine with fighters going out there and, wrestling for RAF or going to jiu-jitsu and having those types of competitions, but they are usually not okay with fighters that they have under contract to go out there and fight for other striking promotions. Jeremy Stevens is one of those guys that actually seems to have that agreement here. Now, I don't know if they're one-off agreements that they have, but we saw them bring him back against Mason Jones. That was a fight I thought for good reason they could bring him back, considering that fight was taking place in Des Moines, Iowa, which is where Stevens is from, and they gave him a great opponent as well in Mason Jones in a fight that had promised to be a fight of the night fight. And that was a fight where we saw Stevens and Jones throw down in the striking game for the first 2 rounds. And then Jones, even though he won the first 2 rounds, went to his grappling in the 3rd round to really secure that victory and really showcase the holes that are still in Jeremy Stevens' game. Stevens went 15-18 with the UFC from 2007 to 2021. He ended his run with the promotion on a 5-fight losing streak. He ended up dipping his toes in other organizations, but eventually found a home with BKFC, where he put together a 3-fight winning streak, including a big knockout victory over Eddie Alvarez. Then he returned to the UFC to fight Mason Jones. Then he went back to BKFC to take on Mike Perry, and then he ended up losing in the 5th round of that fight. Now he returns to the UFC, and I think it's a good enough matchup for him to go out there and be kind of competitive, but still one where you got, old heads going at it. We know what Stevens is good at. Big power in his hands, good kicks if he implements a good enough calf kicking game, but it's really his grappling that has caused him a lot of issues in the past, and that's why he came up short against, Mateusz Gamrot, even in Tal Schultz, even in the 3rd round against Mason Jones. So even at 39 years old, he can be a fun striker, but you got to give him the right matchups for him to go out there and showcase what kind of value he still brings to the table. Now, King Green, minus 325 favorite, it makes absolute sense, right? If this goes the way that I expected it to go, it's going to be a boxing and striking clinic from King Green, while Stevens is going to be whiffing and trying to throw a lot of big power to try to catch Green off guard. The one that really sticks to me here to make me believe that Green cruises in this fight and makes it look kind of easy is the fact that Jeremy Stevens lost a boxing match to Chris Avila. If you guys know Chris Avila, he's like, I believe he has a losing record in mixed martial arts. He might be a better boxer than he is a mixed martial artist, but he's like, Nate Diaz's side piece. Not side piece. That sounds wrong as hell. He's like the guy that Nate Diaz brings along and tries to give opportunities to, even though he's not really deserving of it. And that's how Chris Avila originally got to the UFC. Right? I believe it was the Conor and Diaz card where he managed to convince the UFC to sign Avila and go up against Artem Lobov, and I think Lobov actually ended up beating him that night. So for Jeremy Stephens to get outstruck by a guy like Chris Avila makes me believe that King Green is just going to go out there and absolutely mollywop him on the feet. And that's not the only fight, right? The Chris Avila loss is not the only fight that I'm leaning on as to why I think Green cruises in this fight. It's obvious, right? As long as Green's chin holds up enough here, he should be able to eat Stephens' best shot and then just go out there and outstrike him. I don't know if he gets the knockout. I think for the most part, Stephens has a pretty ironclad chin, unless he's going up against a bigger, stronger Mike Perry. And even then, it took Mike Perry 5 rounds to eventually find the knockout there. But I think Green outstrikes Stephens here, wins this fight on the scorecards. I'll keep my eye on the decision prop for for Green, as I think that would be better than playing the chalk on him. But I still wouldn't mind Green as a parlay piece either.